So hi, my name is Douglas Fallstrom. I'm Head of Product Management at Primary Data. We're here to tell you a few news about what we're launching, or we just launched, and David is going to do a whiteboard session after a couple of slides here. So I know about half of you guys in the room have seen it before. I'm going to level set with a few slides first, make sure everybody's on the same page, as then the whiteboard session will make a lot more sense. The big piece and the big news for us is that DataSphere that we're now launching, we launched it last week on Thursday. We announced to the world that we're ready for GA, which means that we spent about 8 months in POCs with customers at this point, and we're able to now claim that we're shipping our first version of the product. We pre-launched last VMware. We made it available, and since then we've been spending a lot of time with customers, large enterprise customers, and we'll give you some of the feedback as we go through this, what the feedback has been, and we've made some changes with the product throughout this. We bring in the efficiency of server virtualization into storage, and that's the beauty of the data virtualization message. You know, we can make data, the storage itself, a lot more efficient. Some of the key bullets that we're launching at VMware that we're going to go through, and at any point, if you're in the neighborhood, feel free to stop by the booth. You'll see the demo of the product. It's ready. It's going to be available for anybody that wants to use it and download it. And the first bullet, simplify management. So we're able to orchestrate data orchestration, orchestrate operations across multiple tiers of storage. So we're able to come into an environment and allow a customer to utilize NAS, object, and file all in the same data store, and we'll go through how we do that. And through that, we're able to simplify the management piece. We're also able to reduce cost over provisioning by up to 50%. So significantly reduce the amount of overhead that generally customers have when they deploy storage. So whether you're in a VMware environment or a bare metal environment, you still, when you deploy storage, you still tend to pre-allocate a fair amount of capacity per application that you deploy. And by removing the storage silos, we're able to remove all the extra over-provisioning that comes into the picture. And this is something that they will go through in detail on the whiteboard, but we're also able to instantly respond to changing application needs. So for example, an application could have a need to do, let's say, 2,000 IOPS for a week, and then the week after it goes up to 20,000 IOPS, and the storage it was provisioned on couldn't handle those needs. And we're able to, without any disruption to data, be able to move the storage, the data from the 2,000 IOPS storage to 20,000 IOPS. And how we do that is something we'll show in a couple of slides and also on the whiteboard. And the instant and automatic response to these needs is something that's unique with primary data, especially if you look across all the different tiers of storage that we support. For customers that have challenges upgrading storage or migrating storage, we can also help with that as well. So by virtualizing the data, clearly we sit in the stage where a lot of the maintenance operations no longer applies to the data itself. We can abstract that for an end user, which allows us to, for example, migrate storage with a single click in our product. You can come down to our booth and see that in action, where you go in and you just literally decommission the volume in a single click, and the data will slowly move out. So it's quite a big difference from compare and contrast to today, where you generally take at least a couple of months to plan a data migration and then execute on top of that. The final piece that we also talk about here at VMworld is the agility and the customer choice of storage. By being totally storage agnostic, whether you have any NAS vendor, any SAN vendor, any object vendor, we're able to give the customer their full choice on the storage they need to use. So they can go and buy the high-end enterprise storage, and we'll, through our avoidance of sitting in the data path, we can give them the full leverage of the storage, as well as they can go buy white box storage and leverage that as well as a different part of their data. So the customer gets full ability of picking the storage they need for their applications. We achieve this primarily through the data virtualization that also gives a global data space. So it allows us to put several different types of storage, cloud, NAS, SAN, as well as DAS, in-server storage, such as flash or SSDs, all into the same global data space. You manage where the data goes based on objectives. That allows us to run a plethora of applications, whether they're virtual machines, whether they're databases or commercial apps. They use the data directly, all under a single virtual pool of storage. And you carve storage out using our product, and you give a logical view into the storage. And by separating the physical view from the application, we're able to move data at will, move data for performance reasons, move data for migration reasons, as well as you can allocate data on the right storage tier dynamically. So you're not forced to lock an application into one particular storage tier, but you can, as the application evolves, allocate data and move data to newer storage tiers. We'll go into quite a bit of detail on how this works and as we progress the talk. The two products we talk about at the show are DataSphere and what we call DSX, our data services engine. The DataSphere is responsible for the metadata in our product. So when a file is opened, that's where it goes for location of data. And also responsible for the analytics in the product. So that's where we run analytics to figure out where data needs to move, if it needs to move, where all the trade-off decisions are being made on the cost of moving data. Because moving data is not free. So, I mean, by no means do our product just bounce data around. Our product will move data based on not only current need, but also predicted future needs. So we don't just move data and then we move back the next second. You can also get a level of data quality of service in our product. So you can ensure that data has high performance needs, always sits on high performance storage, for example. You can restrict movement of that data away to slower performance storage, but forcing it to be placed on that storage. So one nice side effect, and we'll sketch this out, is our product allows you to manage storage the way you do today, and non-disruptively move it to a much more automated and fluid environment, where you need to go in order to maintain the momentum going forward, in order to manage the massive data growth that most customers end up managing. Our product is sold in a subscription basis, on a yearly subscription, annual subscription, both products. Our DataSphere is always sold in an HA configuration, so a minimum you deploy a minimum of 2. That's included as well. And we're a software company, so we have software only. A software can deploy it as a virtual machine, as an OVA, or in bare metal. So it's the customer's choice, and the customer generally picks based on the size of the environment. So the larger environment, the more likely they're going to end up going on bare metal. About 3/4 of our customers in POC so far has gone on virtual machines. So we're seeing a clear trend that virtual environment is clearly powerful enough to even manage a large environment, which is not surprising at all. They're comfortable with that. Our DSX is the data portal, the data mover, and the cloud connector. So this is where all the work happens. So the metadata engine is the one that decides on what work to do. And when it comes to moving a piece of data, that's where it goes down to the DSX. So DSX will say, I'm going to take this piece of data, I'm going to move it from location A to location B. So also where we move data from our global data space into the cloud, for example. We also allow legacy protocols to access the data space. This is done through what we think of as a portal. So NFS version 3, SMB version 2.1 or 3.x are all supported protocols for us from 1.0. And we're able to give you access into the global data space, again, without changing anything on the client side, by allowing you to go through data portals. Now, and first thing you probably into mind is like, do I have one data portal for all my data? No, you don't. So you can have any number of data portals. So those data portals, the DSX nodes, will scale with environments. So if you need 10 to support the throughput needs and the number of clients you have, you can have 10. If you need 100, you can have 100. Okay? They're automatically managed from our DataSphere engine. So for example, a software update is a single-click approach, and we'll automatically distribute and upgrade everything in a non-disruptive way. Excuse me. The other piece I'd like to highlight is that all the client components that we use are open source and standards-based. So the NFS 4.2 client is already in the upstream kernel. It's been shipping with Red Hat for a while, and it's available, with Red Hat 6 as well as 7. We have no client footprint, which is something we're proud of. So generally, when you deploy storage products, you want to avoid a client footprint as much as possible, especially being proprietary client footprint. That tends to get some pushback from enterprise customers. A little bit on how we work. The data path, and this is a key piece here. So there's been numerous companies in the past that have tried to do data virtualization. They've called it other things, some kind of global namespace. And generally, the approach I've always taken is sitting in the data path. And that approach generally always stops scaling relatively quickly. It's really hard to build a scalable solution that way. So we take an approach where, for most of the time, we're not in the data path. The only time we sit in data path currently is when we do data build, and that might change in the future. So normally, when you open a file, DataSphere gets a request saying, I'd like to open this file. We give a location back to the application, whether it's a virtual machine or a service VM, where the data is. The application then goes directly to where the data is. That allows us to provide a scale-out namespace without having to sit as a layer in between. We only sit as a metadata engine in between. So customers that invested heavily in their NAS, SAN, and even in server storage, they can continue to leverage that investment. We don't force anybody to buy any new storage. Whatever they have on the floor, they can continue using. And we believe by even using what they have on the floor, we can give them higher utilization, higher performance by using our product. The other piece we also allow customers to do is include cloud, and we'll cover that in the next slide, but the cloud is part of the same global data space. It's also a unique value proposition because very few can mix not only block and SAN and NAS in one namespace, but also cloud. On the DataSphere, we have something called smart objectives, and they will cover that in detail on how they work. But for example, you can set an objective in a system that says the data that is active, you run it on your high performance tier. Data as it ages moves to slower and potentially archival tiers in the end. And this happens automatically in the background. What's nice is you can set these high level objectives, and you don't have to go and manually manage them over time. You don't have to manage all your data on a per file basis. The objectives are granular down to each and every individual file on your system. So one VMDK could have a different one from another. But you don't have to go and manage that. You can manage the system high-level objectives, and then if the storage changes underneath, we manage that for you. So it allows you to change the storage layer underneath and maintain the objectives to application. And they will go through the details, technical details, how that works. The other piece I'd like to highlight is the cloud integration. We've spent a fair amount of time building what we think of as the cloud connector. So we support, officially in the product, we support Amazon S3. It works well with any S3 device. We're qualifying devices, and our HSL is growing, so as the HSL grows, we'll support additional devices. This allows you to move any file in our namespace over into the cloud. And when we move data to the cloud today, we dedupe it, and it's also compressed. And it's a secure connection into the cloud, which allows us to transport data over the internet, for example, without risking the access to data. The key piece here is as data ages, for example, it could go from vSAN and over into the slower tiers of the storage infrastructure. And if data gets active, we automatically move the data back out. So it's not a one-way street. Again, you don't have to manually go and do this. It's automatic in the system. From a vCenter perspective, as a VMware administrator, we're fully vVol compatible. We'll cover that in a few slides here. That allows you to set all the policies in VMware using vVols. So you don't have to use our product UI at all from a VMware perspective. So it's all integrated into VMware. As we launch in the product, we've shown, I think, numerous screenshots over the years. Feels like years at this point. These are what we launched with. You can come down to the booth and you can see all these. On the left side, you have a mobility view. So we struggle a little bit on how to visualize mobility of billions of files. I mean, we do this on a per file basis. If you decommission, let's say, an NAS array with 1 billion files on it, you can have a lot of files moving out. Over time, you'll see different types of mobility. So this graph is very handy, and it allows us to size and scale this dynamically and automatically. So you can filter on your type of mobility, you can see what files were moved where, you can see when they were moved and so forth, and you can see what happened and why. So it allows the customer to go into the environment and see, I had a bunch of mobility, let's see what happens and what moved where, and also allows them to monitor the environment from that perspective. We'll also allow the storage administrator to get a good view into the environment from the storage device perspective. So not only do we give the application and the VM admin good visibility, we also allow the storage admin to give good visibility into the environment, which is important from their point of view. In the middle is a dashboard where we use hot tiles, cold tiles, and so forth to view performance and capacity as well as compliance events. So the customer can easily go into the product and see, okay, I'm seeing they have a couple of files that are out of compliance. They click on it and they get a drill down into what files they are. You can also see the total throughput and utilization of the whole cluster. So it's a nice overview of the whole system. The other piece of news that we've announced is that we're now certified for VASA. So we completed our VASA certification. That happened about 2-3 weeks ago, so it's not necessarily something that's just happened, but it's the first time we talk about it. That allows us to be a universal vVol provider for all storage supported for VMware, period. So any storage you can connect into VMware, we make vVol aware. So you can create our objectives, and you can tier data between any storage underneath the hood. It's something that we believe we're the only ones in the world that can do this for not only SAN, NAS, but also cloud. So that means that a single data store, if you look how it would look, in a single data store, you can keep all your tiers of storage and tier data automatically underneath the hood, so you don't have to sit inside vCenter to move things around. You set up, again, a high-level policy that we describe the desired state for data, and the system deals with all the details underneath the hood. If arrays come and go, if the new system is being plugged into the system, we automatically configure that and manage that.
Is that VASA provider inbox or out of box?
It's being hosted from our DataSphere. So when you install it, you point to DataSphere, it gets loaded at that point. It's not in the I/O path per se, so if the DataSphere goes down, I/O continues to run until it's always in an HA mode, so it'll be taken over typically within 30 seconds or so.
Okay. So there's no need for an OVA.
Right, correct. For each, so I'm not sure if you're aware, for each ESX that you deploy a service VM on them. There's a DSX service VM that hosts the local data store. So that's how we scale the number of DSXs out.
The DSXs on each physical ESX host allow us to scale the protocol endpoints that are answering to the vVols. It allows us to scale performance.
Yeah, the key piece here is to, as we go back one picture, two pictures, I guess. 3, 4. In order to support locally attached storage, as well as some kind of network level storage, we need to ensure that we have a component locally. So when you configure DSX and you deploy a product, you configure all the storage to be configured into it, and we know what storage is connected on what server, and we can automatically, for example, move data between them if need to be. The one thing that the DataSphere does really, really well is looking at statistics from when you add storage, we know how fast it is. Runtime, we get what we call layout stats from all the clients. That allows us to measure performance, not only what the performance of storage was when you added it, but also as time goes on over the client. That means we can see, for example, if the client has increased latency from one particular storage device, we can then move it to another storage device if it happens to have lower latency from a client perspective. That allows us, which is pretty unique in the industry, to be able to take, in some effects, the network interface in between. So if there's a network routing problem, we can theoretically write the roundup by using a different piece of storage that doesn't have the same problem. So it's a unique feature because we're measuring the two data points, not only from the storage, but also from the client and application side.